That is the thing about magic, said Nico, smoothing his thick mustache. It means something different to everyone. Hello there, I'm Jan, welcome to my chan, and here we talk about books no one else cares to talk about. Published in October of 1998, Daja's book, or The Fire and the Forging, the story continues for the four young mages of Discipline Cottage. A few months after the pirates' attack on Winding Circle, the quartet and their teachers head north to visit a valley with Duke Vedris. This book also focuses mostly on Daja, obviously, and we follow her as she encounters new and familiar things that will challenge her and help her grow. This book was published a year after the 1997 Indonesian wildfires, one of the largest group of wildfires in recent history. I don't know if Pierce was influenced by this or another wildfire around that time, but a lot of us are now all too familiar with wildfires and the threat they pose. Pierce has never shied away from talking about hard, real-world topics like disasters and refugees. It's something I've always admired about her and her writing. We begin with the kids, teachers, and Duke Vedris and his guard riding into the northern half of the fiefdom of Golden Ridge Valley in northern Emelan. They reach the forested mountains as Rosethorn comes to a stop and dismounts her horse to inspect something. Daja has caught sight of the forest fires glowing orange in the foliage. Many of you probably are too familiar with the way the sky changes and the air hurts and the way the forests burn. When Rosethorn asked their escort how long it's been since the local people have had a large forest fire, they said it's been many years since they've had a real forest fire. They just get small burns here and there thanks to someone named Fire Tamer. Rosethorn gets back on her horse, disappointed in his answer, and they get to moving again. Deja is used to fire being something she works with and wonders how it could become such a dangerous and deadly force. We're next treated to Deja setting up her temporary forge at the local smithy, the owner lending it to her so she can keep practicing while they travel. She's borrowed several blacksmith forges along the way. She gets Triss to spin a rope of wind into the forge to help heat things up as Deja adds more coal. Her job is to make nails. That's all she's been practicing doing so far. Like how Briar is always pulling weeds. Triss is reading a book while she spins the wind. It's about volcanoes and stuff. When a woman with one leg walks in, Deja at first speaks with her, but is then silent when she notices the woman carries a staff. She is a trader for 10th Caravan Idaram. The woman, Polyam, tries talking to her about doing business, but also hushes up when she sees Deja's staff and its unadorned brass caps on either end. She realizes she's talking to Changshi, and instead starts yelling for someone to speak with as if isn't even there.
That's rude.
Deja mind speaks with Triss to get her to come, and, with some pleading, the redhead does and is not happy about it. When Polyam says she is a Wirok and wants to do business with a smith, Triss says Deja is the only one she'll get. Deja reminds Triss, who isn't as familiar with trader customs as Sandry or Briar, that she is Changshi, not to be talked to by other traders. Instead, they talk around her, which Triss does not like, and Deja has Triss tell Polyam she is a mage, and then Mind speaks to Briar and Sandry to find the smith, Khalib. Miles away, Sandry is inspecting the embroidery on the jacket of a guard as she talks with Briar. A guard left his jacket by a tree as his group rested by a creek. Briar mentions that the area is in a drought as well, which doesn't help the local grass fires. When Deja Mind Speaks reaches her, Sandry lets loose a bolt of lightning that leaves a burn on the jacket.
Interesting.
Briar tells Deja he'll find Khalib as the guards come for their stuff. Sandry apologizes profusely, but the guard notices the burn resembles a fern. One of the other guards wants her to do his jacket, but she says she doesn't know how she did it. With Triss, she sent Polyam to the well while she continued to read, but is again interrupted by Polyam reappearing. Suddenly, Deja calls to the girl, and when she rushes in, Polyam behind her, they spot Deja holding hot iron nails. She tried grabbing one, but grabbed a few, and then they started winding and stretching around one another and her hand. It continues to grow before reaching out branches like a grapevine, still glowing red hot. It continues to wrap around Deja more and more as Triss mind calls for Briar and Sandry to get Frostpine. In the meantime, the four sync up with Deja and Briar uses his affinity for plants to get the metal tree to stop growing. By then, the vine has caught a grip of Triss while trying to help Deja. The tree has stopped and no longer glows red hot, but the girls are trapped. An hour later, Frostpine is inspecting the metal plant. He says he's had his magic get away from him before it, and sends his magic into the iron. Polyam shows back up with two traders, an older woman and a Mimander dressed in yellow. Frostpine and Deja are able to use their magic to free the girls. Rosethorn uses her magic and says it feels like the iron tree will continue to grow. They also can't just melt it down now because the magic has permanently changed the iron. The Memander speaks up at this moment, offering a gold maja, the currency of Emelan. Daja isn't happy about this. They're trying to undersell her, and she would know most of all she is a traitor, even if she is Shang-Chi. They say it because it has to be cleansed of her bad luck. Frostpine says it's not for sale until they study it first anyway. When the caravan boss and the Memander leave, Deja says aloud towards Polyam that if they want it, they have to bargain with her. We blue traders have a saying, she remarked, staring off to Polyam's side. When three parties bargain, no one wins. 10th Caravan Itaram must bargain with me directly. Me. Talk to Deja Kusubo the Changshi, or there will be no talk at all. When she's gone, Khalib arrives. Frostpine sends Deja to wash up, taking her new plant with her, and Rosethorn takes Briar to see the gold of Gold Ridge. She takes him to see a series of terraces behind the castle where saffron crocuses grow. They're all shriveled and brown due to the drought. Saffron is very expensive. Nico appears out of nowhere, startling Briar. When Briar picks up a handful of the dying plants, lightning sparks from him, destroying the saffron and leaving the sandy ground around it reduced to glass. Nico sees this, and Briar tells him he has to help fix this because he doesn't want to accidentally kill any more plants. Rosedorn comforts him and reminds him they're there to help if they can. With Deja, she arrived at the bathhouse, a natural hot spring below the castle. Unlike Winding Circle where the bathhouse is heated by a furnace, as she gets into the water, the meadows and the mineral-rich water welcome her. She lets her magic wander as she relaxes. In her mind, she found her iron vine tree, magic shimmering in each strand, branch, and twig. The meadow shifted slowly, spreading a touch here and a hint there. Barely moving, breathing softly, Deja examined her creation. She could feel bits of Sandry, Triss, and Briar mixed in with her own power, but only because she knew what to look for. The time when it was easy to tell her magic apart from that of her friends was over. In the weeks since Sandry had spun the four of them into one so they might survive an earthquake, Deja's fire and metal talents had picked up touches of Sandry's thread power, Triss's nature magic, and Briar's connection to growing things. The vine was as much Briar as Deja in its ability to grow, but Sandry's magic had made the rods twist around one another to make a strong trunk. What part of it was Triss's, Deja couldn't tell yet, but sooner or later she would know. We also learned that Deja's Changshi status can be paid off if a family is indebted enough to do so. The faith of the Tosaw, or traders, is based around debt and checks and balances. Sandry and Lark arrive. Deja tells Lark she feels unclean, but still respects her people's ways. They talk about her creation and how her magic got away from her. Sandry says her got away from her too with the lightning. Lark says they'll need to map out the forest magic, and tells Sandry since she spun them together, she will weave the map. In their room in the castle, Deja is watching the fires in the distance as night arrives. Frostpine shows up, then Shriek the Starling, then Triss, who feeds Shriek. Frostpine then goes to change as Briar arrives, who shows the girls the glass he accidentally made. We learn here that Triss had cut off her hair between the previous book and now, because that's usually where her lightning collects. Sandry arrives and gives each of them a length of thread to carry for a day, so the thread can get to know them. It's for the magic map. Later at dinner, they dine with the castle inhabitants and Lady Inulia Fa Juzan, who's ruled since her husband's passing. She is joined at the head of the table by Duke Vedris, her father-in-law. Lady Anulia tries saying Sandry should go to Lightsbridge for a proper education, but Nico says they don't teach everything. Then in bursts Yarun Fire Tamer, a Lightsbridge educated mage. He's not a fan of Nico. Then in bursts a boy who tells Yarun there's a fire in the village. He asks Nico to come, who invites Lark, Rosethorn, and Frostpine. The four also follow along. They head up to the castle walls where they watch Yarun throw some powder, say some magic words, and the powder reaches toward the village and snuffs out the flames. He had asked Nico if he could put it out, knowing that Nico couldn't. He's really jealous that Nico is more famous and successful than he is. They're dismissed and everyone leaves Yarun, except Rosethorn, who heads back to give him a piece of her mind. The four secretly follow and eavesdrop. Triss magics a breeze to help them listen. Rosethorn goes off about how 30 years without a forest fire does no one any good. Certain places need regular fires to keep things from getting out of hand. Fire serves humankind, my dear young woman, said Yarun, his voice cold and clipped. Beyond that, it is a symptom of chaos, disorder, destruction. Don't patronize me. I am not your dear anything. I love it when she talks mean, Briar told his companions. Their grins were all as wicked as his own. They knew Rosethorn's prickles very well and respected them. It was always a treat to see someone fortunate draw her wrath. Do not take that tone with me. If you have nothing constructive to say, then do something for me, university mage. You living circle types are all alike. There is no order anywhere. There is only instinct and currents and movement without meaning or structure. Yours is simply a way to avoid study and research. You said it yourself. Grass fires renew the land. Everything goes back even better than before the fire. Isn't that so? Did it never occur to you or your father that woodlands need fire in the same way? I did not spend the day in the saddle to be lectured by a chanting religious. This valley is a death trap. Rosedorn's voice was tight with rage. She took a deep breath. Fires, small fast ones, scour the ground of mast. Mast? Deja asked the other silently. Junk, replied Briar. Dead wood, saplings, dead leaves, and nuts. Rosedorn was still talking. Normally, an inch or two of that trash burns off fast. The bark on mature trees is thick enough that they survive with only a mild scorching. But now, with no fires for 30 years, the mass is at least a foot thick in most places. Normally, it would be wet, damp enough to discourage fire. But you've had 3 years of drought. It's dry as tinder. Your saplings are tall enough that fire in their crowns can now leap to the unprotected crowns of the big trees, and everyone here believes you can stop such a fire. I can, and if you can't, I have yet to fail, dedicate Rosethorn. I am very good at my work. You have been good at crushing spot fires and warding off lightning strokes. Now you are breeding a firestorm that won't be so easy to halt. And I say you underestimate my power at this. Talk to one of my students about fiddling with nature when it gets in motion. She's still alive to talk about it, but it was a near thing. Nico catches them and orders them back to the room, where he reprimands them seriously. The fault is mine, he said at last. I never had students so young before. It simply did not occur to me that you would not understand the manners or the common sense that goes with magecraft. He stopped to glare at the four. I confess, had I not been so interested in the way your powers combine, I would have called you to book before this, he continued. Certainly, I knew there were other occasions when you've eavesdropped on conversations not meant for your ears. Trish stared at her blue cotton-covered lap. Magic is not a toy, Nico continued. It is not a convenience, it is a precious thing. It is not for use in getting around your elders. I don't believe I realized until we began this trip how often you children call on it when it would be every bit as easy to do things physically instead. You are so strong that you have never learned that you cannot throw magic around like water. That a day will come when you will need every dram of magic you possess, and you will have weakened it to eavesdrop and play and do chores that are otherwise boring. He smoothed his hair back from his face. As of this moment, none of you are to use magic without one of your teachers to watch you. I mean this. If I suspect you dealt in power without supervision, I will see it on you. You know that I can, and it will go the worse for you. The four are forbidden from using magic unless under the supervision of their teachers now. The next day, Deja works at a portable forge Frostpine borrowed. She can't work at Khalib's because he's filling an order for Caravan Eateram, and she can't be involved because she's Changshi. She is to make nails. She admires the iron plant, which has put out leaves as it continues to slowly grow. Briar tells her it might need to be planted in metal-bearing soil. Polyam shows up, dripped out in all yellow with charms and all. Deja calls her Kunswanan, someone who goes through a ceremony to talk with Changshi. There are many cleansing rituals she will have to partake in even days after meeting with Deja now. She offers a price, but Sandria and the others say it is not a proper bargaining if there are no refreshments and cushions and a gift of goodwill. They basically tell her she wasted her time and has to come back to trade properly. When she leaves, Rosethorn walks in and has Briar start making aloe vera into burn salve. Lots of it. Rosethorn also has Triss cut up aloe vera plants for her. Later, Lark comes by and helps Sandri set up a makeshift weaving loom when Fire Tamer walks in. He's complaining that Sandri is too blue-blooded to be doing such low-class work. When he spots the burn salve being made, he gets furious and storms off. Deja, letting her magic take control again, begins weaving a magic fire of orange and blue flame, the magic possessing her, wanting to take shape. When she's done, it's very hot and very bright. When she lays it on the coals go out, but the fire knot stays on. Nico examines it with his magic, saying it feeds off magic without burning itself out. Yarun has shown up again and is horrified by what he sees. He calls it the Great Square of King Zuhair the Magnificent. Yarun, who had been pale, was turning a mottled beet color. This is the Great Square of King Zuhair the Magnificent. The Great Square, but it cannot be done on fire. It cannot be done in fire or in pure magic. Inks, metals, etched in glass. I have seen all of these, but he seemed to be fighting to breathe. Where are your protective circles or runes? What magic can you work if there are no runes to confine the effect or to guide the power of the raising? Nickler and Goldeye, is this your teaching? Magic without direction? Without the correct procedures? How can it even exist? Lark firmly steered Yarun to a bench and sat him down. Get a hold of yourself, she ordered, black eyes flashing. And stop yelling. You don't look at all well. When was the last time you saw a healer of any kind? I don't need a healer, he cried. I need explanations. This isn't magic. He pointed at the forge with a trembling hand. I don't know what it is, but even you living circle mages understand there is a proper way to do things, and a great square made in fire is not it. Is he always this excitable? Briar asked Nico, who continued to study Deja's creation. He acts like magic's all about rules, added Deja, shooting a glare at Yarun. Lark had wet down her pocket handkerchief and was putting it across the man's forehead. Yarun leaned against the wall behind him and closed his eyes. His chest continued to heave. They could see he was talking fast, he but at least he had lowered his voice. Fire Tamer is shocked that Nico teaches them this way. That is the thing about magic, said Nico, smoothing his thick mustache. It means something different to everyone. The fire wants you to shape it, you say. Deja nodded. What's this great square he's talking about? Triss wanted to know. It is a talisman, said Nico. One generally used to draw things like fortune, wisdom, and the like. Goldeye, are you teaching them by guess and the gods? Yarun demanded shrilly. Nico turned. Their magic follows no their magic follows no instructional guidelines or any of the patterns described in the Encyclopedia of Wisdom, he said tartly. My instinct is that to ground them now in matters of runes, protective rites, and formulas would be to restrict the growth of their power. Of course it will restrict them, cried Yarun, lunging to his feet. Lark's handkerchief fell into the dirt. Without order to their learning, how will they be tested? How evaluated? How licensed? How will they teach? Even the mages of the Living Circle meet proper requirements to be granted journeyman status and then an initiate's robe. And apparently word spread that the four are the cause of the earthquake last summer, which obviously isn't true.
Thank you, Catherine Obvious.
Nico talks to him as he guides Yarun away from the children. Deja uses her new fire talisman without issue and continues to work. They all do until midday meal. They're given rations, and as they complain, they ask what can be done to help the village. Lark says some problems are simply too big to fix. After lunch, Briar goes to the bathroom and runs into Deja on the way back. She said there's a warm spot in the courtyard, and then her magic leaps out into the ground. They're both shocked when a geyser erupts from the spot. They aren't sure if they broke the pipes under the castle or not, so they send their magic down to investigate. They pass into the hot springs, then Deja's magic wanders further and gets stuck in magma, but is saved by the fire talisman she crafted earlier. She flees through a crack in the rock and appears over a series of geysers and mud pits. Then in the distance she spots a glacier. Briar comes to her, miles from Gold Ridge. They wander back and ask Triss to fix the geyser they made, since they didn't burst any pipes. They then change their mud-covered clothes and return to the others. There they find Polyam on blankets and cushions. She's brought a copper plate as a gift, which Deja sets beside her iron plant. Polyam goes through the traditions of tea and conversation, but when she gets to the trader food, Deja has to hide the tears that threaten to break through. She misses her old home and its ways and its customs, its food, its people. I can only imagine being separated from where you grew up.
No, I'm still sad.
Polyam continues, inviting the other children and Lark. They talk about how they know trader things and how they got to Winding Circle. Deja talks about the glacier, which Polyam calls the Dalbers Glacier. We also learn that blue traders travel by sea and river, while white traders travel by snow and sand. The others get back to their task, and Deja and Polyam get to business. Polyam throws in a packet of their bargaining tea, which is a big deal for traders. They don't usually give that out to just anybody. When Deja looks back at her iron plant, she sees it shot out a branch into the copper plate. It's absorbed the copper, and now a copper stripe runs up its trunk and formed a bud of copper on it. Deja tries telling Polyam that she doesn't have to bring another gift, but Triss yells it'll look better for Polyam what just happened. Polyam comments she is almost like a traitor, and Deja says she's from House Chandler in caption. Apparently, Polyam has heard of House Chandler and promises to keep an eye on the redhead, and leaves. Lark tells Sandry how she will map the magic of her friends using the pieces of thread. The magic will color them so that she can see them against the white thread. She also needs to borrow their magic in order to map it. It's just for a day. They also have to carry new spools of silk, so Sandry can map their magic back into its proper place. Lark explains how Sandry is different from her in terms of her weaving magic. Lark, why aren't you doing this? Inquired Triss. Is this the kind of thing a new weaver ought to be doing? No offense, she added to Sandry, who only grinned. Except that this particular new weaver has already spun magic, if you can recall, said Lark. I've never done such a thing. I cannot manipulate someone else's power, and although I've woven maps on a loom, it's been for something physical, searching for the location of a lost child once, or finding out where robbers had their lair. In tracing things of power, I would be helpless. Deja, Briar, and Triss thought this over. Sandry continued to wind thread onto her shuttle. Lark fiddled with a piece of scarlet thread, then continued. The mages I've known either shape a physical thing to carry their power, or they just wield magic as part of their own bodies. I can place a spell of invisibility in a cloak as I weave. Nico sees magic with his real eyes. Rosethorn's power grows with her plants. Frostpine builds and spells as he works metal. And most of the time, that's how you all do magic. Most of the time, but not always. We know that Deja put magic onto iron so thoroughly that she changed its nature. Triss sprouts lightning. She doesn't need to wait for a storm. Sandry was able to spin a thing that did not exist in the physical world. Your magics. Briar? Me, I just cook things in the ground, said the boy glumly. Where did the fire to cook with come from? Lark wanted to know. Like Triss, you sprouted it. She hugged him around his shoulders with one arm and let him go. We should have done this mapping weeks ago, the moment we knew that Sandry had combined your magics during the earthquakes. The three then envisioned themselves giving Sandry their power. Deja imagines a wire, Triss a bolt of lightning, and Briar a tendril of a root towards Sandry, who is a weaving shuttle in their mind. Then she has their powers, and they get back to work. At dinner that evening, smoke drifts through the castle windows. Sandry realizes she can no longer mind speak with her friends. Then Lady Enulia announces that the men will help dig a fire break. Yarun says it's just a precaution.
Sure about that? You sure about that?
Later in their room, Frostpine comes in and inspects Deja's nail and is confused as to why there is no magic in them. Then he realizes she has no magic, and when she says Sandry has it, he begins to get very upset. Lark calms him and shows him that Sandry is simply mapping their magics. I always envisioned the weaving that she's doing as a series of 4 stripes, one green, one orange, one a pale cream, and the last one blue, with random threads crisscrossing the stripes where their magic spun into the others. He takes a walk to cool his head. The others get to talking. Triss wants to see the glacier tomorrow morning. Pollyam shows up, offering to guide Triss and the others to see the Dalber's glacier. She's come to give a second gift, a jade snow leopard, only found in the mountains of Yangjing, a fantasy counterpart of China. She says she's gotten the Gilav, or caravan leader, to go up to 3 gold majas, aka a lot of money. They will bargain more tomorrow. Deja tells the others that Polyam has risen in the eyes of her caravan. Usually a Wirok, or the person who trades directly with craftsmen, is despised. All this magic has made her look really good in their eyes. Deja goes to talk with Frostpine, who tells her how he was born in a country called Mabao. From the time he was born through his childhood, the village shaman siphoned his magic, leaving him with none. When the shaman died, it came rushing back, ruining his life with the untrained magic now in him. He also found out his parents benefited from his magic being stolen, so he left to find a teacher, and only now speaks with his younger sister. The next day, they're on their way to the glacier. Sandry isn't as talkative, feeling the drain from her magical working the day before. Certified yapper. Triss, Deja, and Polyam gets talking about the drought and how the valley needs rain and copper and saffron if it hopes to survive. Later, for midday, they stop to eat a meal away from the glacier, as its winds are cold. When they set up the trader picnic, Deja places a centerpiece, a copper rose from her plant. They eat, and then Deja and Polyam take a walk and talk. Polyam tells her how she lost her eye and leg. It was a rock slide in the mountains of Karang, trying to lead their horses, mules, and camels across. She was the one who tended the animals before she became Wirok. She was the best, and she could no longer do what she loved.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
But then she says it's better than being Trang-Shi, so...
But that's rude.
She does say that she prays Deja gets all the Zokin, or good karma, in the world to help pay off her books and earn her place back among her people. She does feel sorry for the ship or caravan who is indebted enough to pay off her debt. Foreshadowing. Triss comes running up with the others, explaining that maybe they could melt the ice with the lava underground to get water to Gold Ridge Valley. Nico warns they have to be careful. Sandry says they should tell Lady Enulia, and everyone agrees. At the picnic blanket, Lark shows them that around the rose was 2 more stems of copper. Nico says it must have struck a vein of copper, and they agree. Lady Enulia needs to know about that too. Nico does a spell to hide the plant in a glamour of a tree. Briar corrects him and he replaces the tree with the more native one. Then they return to the castle. On the way, Yarun appears not too far off and puts out a grass fire threatening to burn an orchard. Then he passes out, but quickly regains his composure and waves to the others as they continue on. It's not a good sign. Back at the castle, Nico goes to talk with Lady Anulia. Polyam goes back to her caravan, and that leaves Lark in the fore. Sandry pulls out the weaving, and when she's done, Lark uses a magical powder to visualize the magical map more clearly. Because Sandry can see it because she can see magic like the others, but Lark and the other adults don't usually see magic all the time. It has such a strong effect that it causes Lark to lose her lunch. Lark then explains she will have to separate each crisscross thread and it'll take days with unknown side effects. But Sandry suggests just adding borders to the existing stripes to help them contain their magic without fully separating them. Lark agrees to run it by the other teachers. She goes to talk with Frostpine and Triss goes to get Nico. Sandry rolls up her map. That afternoon, Daja tries filing nails in her room and gets bored after a dozen and walks out. She heads to the watchtower where she runs into Yarun, who's drinking a stimulant tea to keep focus. She asks him why he hates Nico, and he answers in a long speech. With no idea of the thoughts that raced through her mind, Yarun continued. People like you and Nickler and Goldeye will never be just another mage. You will never work day in and day out at ordinary spells. Never mind that our world cannot do without spells to keep food from spoilage, or spells to hunt down criminals. Ordinary mages live in shabby rooms. They scramble for money to pay for rent and supplies, and the moment someone like Goldeye comes to town, no one has time for you anymore. You aren't as interesting as he is. You aren't as famous. You just do the spells to ward off pickpockets and keep plumbing and chimneys from clogging. She was sorry she had asked. Yarun wasn't done. I worked for 20 years after I left the university, traveling constantly, trying to become one of the best, trying to become one of the great ones. Why not? I was good. It was simply a matter of finding the right spells and the right patron. Every time my father wrote, it was, when you stop deluding yourself and want a real job, come home. Finally I did. I came home to put out fires in North Emelan. And here I am, working magic few others have the talent for, while my lady seats Nickler and Goldeye at the uppermost table, and me with him. My usual place, when no great mages visit, is just above the salt, with the chamberlain and the steward. He drank from his flask and smiled bitterly. Now you regret that you asked. Not at all, Daja lied firmly.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
Later that night, Sandry gets lost in weaving the stripes and borders to enclose their magics. When she stops to eat, she's startled by her uncle Duke Vedris, who says she was glowing. She's trying to finish as much as she can tonight. The Duke tells her that had they not found the copper, that he would have had to make some hard choices.
What's that supposed to mean?
After dinner, the other three find Sandry asleep on a chair, her weaving complete on the floor. She's already reclaimed her power, and the others do so by touching their respective stripe. Green for Briar, white for Triss, and orange for Daja. Then they head to bed, their magic their own, but still tinged with the power of their friends. The next day, Daja readies her plant for the traders. Briar and Rosethorn help with getting a pot and repotting it, then filling the soil with iron scraps for it. Sandry is still asleep when Nico and Frostpine show up to have Daja show them the magical path she took to the lava. They're joined by Triss and Briar, and all five astral travel through the ground into the lava near the glacier. Then they set about searching for cracks in the earth to channel the lava. They find one, then Nico has them memorize the entire glacial area before they go back to their bodies. Polyam, Rosethorn, and Lark are there on the balcony. Polyam has brought the payment, 2.5 astrals, and the tea, all in a beautiful box. Daja offers to bring the plant in a wheelbarrow to see the caravan off. The other are invited to dine on the watchtower. Yarun has something to share. Daja gets very nostalgic seeing the trader caravan preparing to leave. She ties down the plant for Polyam in her cart, and soon the caravan is off through the forest. Daja has a moment where for one moment she was a traitor again.
No, I'm still sad.
At the watchtower, Lady Anulia announces that Yarun has helped extinguish all the fires in the valley. Rosethorn asks if he's sure, even under the mass that has built up in the forest.
Sure about that? You sure about that?
He explodes on her and Nico. Then Triss spots smoke coming from the forest. Nico uses a seeing spell to show them all the fire that has spread under the mast in the forest. Triss and Nico offer their magical strength, but Yarun shakes them off, saying he needs no help. Then he begins casting, even drawing his own blood to strengthen the spell. He's able to put out the blaze, but then another one appears soon after. He douses that one, and then 4 more pop up, and he puts them out one by one, drawing on more and more magic until he burns himself up, dropping dead. Lady Anulia asks if there's anything Nico or the others can do. Nico tells her any maid who tries will die like Yarun. She says the village will be cut off, and Nico and Lark rush out to see what they can do. Lady Anulia is then joined by Duke Vedris, leaving Briar, Triss, and Sandry behind. Sandry points out that Daja and the caravan are still out there. Daja is riding with Polly when she senses fire in the distance. She sends out her magic to find the wildfires nearby. Sandry mind speaks to her and tells her it's up ahead, the others joining their conversation. Daja tries to tell the traders to stop, but they won't listen to Chang'Xi. Polyam tries, but she is unclean at this moment. Daja then threatens to rust every nail and piece of metal if they don't stop, which gets some of the wagons to stop. The Gilav comes out to yell at her, but Daja tells her about the fire. Even Polyam begs with her mother. Yeah, apparently since the fall, their relationship has been strained. She orders for the caravan to turn back, and they do, slowly and efficiently. Daja runs up ahead to check out how far the fires are. About 300 yards ahead, she finds the blaze all around her. She calls out to Triss, who is joined by Frostpine, who is able to mind speak through the kids. Daja suggests a large bellows to blow the fire out, but Frostpine tells her it won't work on this level. Sandry tells her she has to weave it, like she did the magic square. Daja begrudgingly gets to work, grabbing at 3 large ropes of fire, begins weaving. The first strand fights her, but Sandry channels through her to get it under control. Triss takes the next strand, and Frostpine helps with the third. Daja is channeling a lot of magic through her. It's starting to wear on her body. When Sandry finishes her square, Daja tries using it to smother a section of flames, but it has the unintended side effect of pushing fresh air out and creating more fires. As Triss and Frostpine finish, she wonders what to do when Polyam hobbles over. She tells her they're cut off and can't retreat. They're trapped. The watchtower, Rosethorn, eager to help, decides to protect as much green as possible. When Briar tries reaching out to help her, he is blown backward by her power. She won't let him get hurt this time. Lark runs up and gives him some mint water and offers to lend Rosethorn her strength, while Briar goes to help Frostpine and the girls. Nico volunteers to help Briar and the others too.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Back with Daja, she lends the 2 ropes of fire to Sandry and Frostpine, who spin them together to better hold. Daja runs to the end of the caravan, seeing the faces of her family and the people who have treated her horribly. She looked again at the caravan. This time she saw the faces of her own family, drowned long months ago. Chandrisa could have been her mother, the ride leader her father. For each adult and child she could name one of the dead. Her brother Uneni, always trying to get out of work. Mean Aunt Hulwemi. Cousin Ziba, who loved to sing. Her little sister, only 9, in her first month aboard ship. Her grandmother, 73 and toothless, still cooking for their crew. All that thinking she did in a breath's time, all that memory, it raced through her like a speeding bird.
No, I'm still sad.
She grabs her staff and faces the blaze at the rear, everyone hiding as best as they can. Rosethorn is trying to save the trees around her, giving Daja a moment to think. She spins Nico, Triss, and Briar together and grabs the fire in one huge column instead of spinning it into smaller ones because there's no time. She hammers away with her magic, and when it tries to flee from her grasp, she races after it, grasping at the column of fire. Her clothes burn up, her staff burns to ash, the brass metal cap falls into her palm, pooling there as lightning hooks sink into her. It's Triss, keeping Nico and Briar joined with her. Briar tells her to put down a root, and she does, finding granite stones deep in the ground, and a crack between them that she thrusts the fire into. Triss and Nico take the root and pull it further along through the mineral baths as Daja rides along until they reach the glacier. Together, they send the fire there. Daja then pulls the rope from Sandry and Frostpine and sends the fire down too. She keeps going until only the burnt land and smoke are left. When she returns to her body, she sees the caravan bowing to her. They promise to repay their debt, to help wipe her name from the records of Chang'Xi, and to make her home 10th Caravan Idaram. Not everyone escaped death. 5 people were lost in the blaze, and many in the village and caravan were badly burned, so the caravan is staying until their wounded heal up. Daja now has a mass of molten brass permanently a part of her palm. She can peel off layers, and when she places it together, they merge together like mercury. This living metal will be with her for the rest of her life. But it does give her an idea that she discusses with Nico and Frostpine. Then she borrows the iron plant back to examine with Rosethorn and Briar. Later she receives a new brass top staff from Gilav Chandrisa. They offer her a place among them and training by a proper commander. They'll make her unlearn her crafting skills because it's still frowned upon. Daja works on her project for a month, everyone helping out. Plant and thread magics to help with the flexibility. Nico casts complex spells on it, and Triss added just a drop of heat to give it the warmth of human flesh. Once the ironwork was done, she draped the entire thing in living metal. Then Sandry wraps the gift in blue silk. That night, Daja decides she's staying. She can't give up smithing and her new family. The next day, the Gilav, the Rive leader, Mamander, and Polyam show up. They perform proper conversation rituals of tea and cakes before getting to business. Daza says she wants to stay, will accept them wiping her name from the Changshi book. They let her keep the staff as a sign of friendship. They also sent someone south to wipe her name 2 weeks ago. Then Daja gives her gift of repayment to Polyam, who without she wouldn't have never been able to get the chance to earn the Zokin to wipe her name from the book. She built a living metal leg for her. They help her try it on. She can even bathe with it. Now they're even, and Daza says she hopes they can be friends, and Polyam says they will always be friends.
Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
The next day, they see the caravan off, waving goodbye. Frostpine tells Daza she will continue making amazing things, starting with nails, so he can see how much he's grown. The Duke says she can do so at home, because he is eager to leave. The four race to the castle. The last one gets to do the packing. I don't know if the author intended it as such, but this has always read to me that we should respect others' cultures even when we might disagree with it, because it's someone's culture and that's worthy of recognition. The traitors might have harsh punishments. That is no reason to abandon them altogether. They are a people after all, and like any people, we can do good and bad, and often we do both. I liked getting to know more about traitor culture and language. Blue seems to be a very lucky color for them. I like that they're a nomadic people too. Can't say I see too much of that in fiction, but then again, I rarely read fantasy worlds, so... The four have already grown so much with all they've been through, emotionally and magically, and it shows that they still have much to learn. Their magical journeys are just beginning after all. It's only been less than a year. That's all I have to say though. I'll catch you all when I recount the finale of the series, and this one might hit a bit close to home for a lot of us, maybe even all of us. I'll catch you all in the next one. Leave a like, comment your thoughts on Pierce and the series, and subscribe if you haven't already. Bye!
Bye!